So what we're seeing is incredibly serious, and we also should remember, Patrick, that 3 girls lost their life last week in the most horrific murders, and our thoughts should be with the families and the victims, first of all. However, what we are seeing, it's now over a week where we're seeing disruption, criminality, violence, thuggery across the streets of Britain. That's unacceptable. You will know, your viewers also will know this too, I've called for the recall of Parliament. It's summer recess right now, and I absolutely believe that we need to be holding the government to account, asking important questions of the government on a whole raft of issues, such as the policing of these particular protests, but at the same time, really be, standing up for many of these communities that have been affected really badly.
OK, I mean, you were Home Secretary for a number of years. What would you have done differently to Yvette Cooper?
So there's quite a lot. Don't forget, during my time as Home Secretary, we had the pandemic, we had BLM protests and all sorts of things going on. This is a difficult time for the Home Secretary, but I can tell you, and this is why I think it's important we should recall Parliament, I think she needs to be asked directly, what discussions has she been having with the police? You've asked me what I would do differently. Well, I would have spoken to every chief constable across the country, England and Wales. I would have been holding operational calls to hear directly from them the type of planning and the processes that they put in place to make sure that protests will be policed properly. I'd be cancelling, for example, annual leave. Look at the scale of what we're seeing. I'd be making sure we're asking the right questions. Have the police got all the resources that they need? There's a really important point here as well, though, Patrick. The police are accountable to the public. And the way in which we hold them to account is through Parliament. It's through our Home Secretary. This is why I do believe Parliament needs to be recalled. These are fundamental questions we should be asking of the government.
Do you think they're scared of that accountability then? Is that the implication?
So I wouldn't say that, no. I mean, to be quite frank, look at the country right now. Look at the towns and cities that are being affected and the protests and the level of disruption and violence that we're seeing. I have I genuinely think that the government are doing everything that they possibly can. But we have to also ensure that the police have the tools, the resources, the capability, the skills to be doing this for very, very good reasons. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of horrendous footage. It is totally unacceptable. The level of criminality that's taking place, crime is crime. We are seeing crime and disorder across our country. That needs to be addressed. Government is speaking in tough terms about sentences and what will happen to these individuals and the criminals and the thugs, but we still need to be pressing the government to answer questions about policing in this country and what has been going on.
You mentioned there that the government is speaking in very strong terms. Keir Starmer does stand accused of being two-tier in his rhetoric. Nigel Farage certainly thinks that he's being two-tier. Millions of other people do think that he's being two-tier as well. Do you think that police and politicians are more afraid of tackling Muslim gangs than other groups?
Well, that should not be the case, full stop. And you've asked an important question. And you've asked a question which tells me that that is the perception. And the fact that even that perception exists right now, we don't know the real facts, right? This is, again, why we need to be asking questions of the government. The fact that that perception exists undermines public trust and confidence in our police. That's not a good place to be. And I've worked very hard against that. I really have. This is why we have to have the questions, the scrutiny to the Home Secretary and to Keir Starmer, because actually the police need to have the tools, the equipment, the backing to police in the right way across all protests. Doesn't matter who, but literally all the protests where we're seeing thuggery, violence, criminality. Everyone that's involved in that, these protests should be policed. I've seen footage on television, I'm sure you have as well. I saw some on social media last night from one part of the country where I saw no police. I want to know why that was. Why was there no police presence? These are the types of questions that need to be asked. This is why we need to be holding the government to account. I say this actually as an opposition backbench MP as well, that's our job, our responsibility and duty to the country and to the public to be asking these questions of the government, which is why I will say this, Parliament should be recalled. There'll be so many people, the public are fearful right now. It's disgraceful what's going on. This is our amazing country. And look at our reputation in the world right now when people are looking in on our country and seeing all of this. This has to be tackled, and the police need to police every protest, deal with the criminals involved. Criminality is criminality. There's no interpretation there. The people that are throwing bricks, burning buildings, targeting mosques, for example, but even holding weapons and threatening people, that is criminal behaviour. They need to be arrested, and the police should be doing that across the board.
If you were in power, because this is important, because you presumably hope to be Prime Minister one day, would you have mentioned things like Hare Hills? Would you have mentioned things like what we saw in Rochdale? Would you have mentioned things like what we saw last night in Birmingham with gangs of British Asian men walking around the streets and beating people up outside pubs? Would you have given equal weight to that as what we've seen from the horrific far-right stuff?
Absolutely, across the board.
Right.
Across the board. No fear or favour across the board. We believe in the rule of law in this country, not the rule of the mob. End of story. What we saw last night, and I saw that footage in Birmingham, that's just outrageous and unacceptable. That was criminality and violence. But what was missing? Where were the police? Now, I don't know the full facts behind this, so I don't want to go into any speculation whatsoever. But again, in the absence of the facts, the government needs to be answering these questions in Parliament. As I said, the police are held to account in Parliament. Should be held to account, basically, through the Home Secretary of the day. And the only mechanism we have to do that is through Parliament. Well, it's the wrong approach. It's not just a bad idea, it's the wrong approach. This basically means that our incredible local authorities, our local councils, will effectively need to now, deal with this issue. And, Patrick, you will know, we didn't get everything right in the last government. There's no doubt about that. And that was demonstrated at the ballot box recently. But we had proposals and plans to have reception and detention centres. The crucial thing is that individuals who come to our country illegally, they need to be treated differently. And we need deterrents, such as reception centres, detention centres, so that we can actually then have the fast-track removal of these individuals. That is crucial. That was government policy, as you recall, certainly when I was Home Secretary. I absolutely think that is the way we should be going forward. Detained sites, reception centres, so we have that distinction. We should not be having this policy of dispersal, and this will put significant pressures onto local councils.
Quite keen to get a flavour of what Priti Patel's Conservative Party would look like going forward, really. Now, we have had some noises from the likes of Suella Braverman, who've said she doesn't want to be forced to leave. She's been called things like mad and crazy and other names for having the concerns that she's got. If you were leader, would you be particularly annoyed if she did decide to join Reform?
Well, first of all, I would not want to see that happen. Let me just be clear about that. And, I am standing in this leadership contest. I think this is a crucial moment for my party, the Conservative and Unionist Party. I have a lot of experience in the party. I've been a member for 30 years, and I absolutely believe that I'm one of the strongest candidates to bring people together and unite people. And I can say that because, having been a member for 30 years, I've been consistent in my views, my beliefs, my values. I'm not a politician that's had to go on a journey to rediscover myself or my views. People know what they get with me. Unity has to be at the crux, the centre of how we go forward as a party. And I say that to all colleagues. Look at the result of the general election. The public voted against us. We were disunited. We failed to deliver. And so I want to see us, number one, come together, but also start to work together to reform the party. So that's our party, our structures, the way we campaign, the way we engage even our grassroots, how we stand up and become, I want us to become the largest party in local government all over again. We've moved away from that over the last 2 years. But with that, we should be standing up for Conservative values and beliefs. And I absolutely think that is a very significant area where every Conservative member of Parliament and our grassroots members can unite around that. And we therefore develop the right policies in due course through those Conservative values and beliefs. Being patriots of our country, standing up for law and order. I've never shied away from all that. Yes, learning lessons around immigration, controlling immigration, looking at the levers that the government actually does have, and we could have one day again through the systems that, by the way, we put in place and the laws that we put in place. And it's the same across the board as well. But actually freedom, the freedom to succeed, economic opportunity, these are all Conservative values, and I want us to be back there again as a united party, actually standing up for them. Conservatism hasn't failed, it has not. And I absolutely believe that this is where we need to come together and stand up for who we are and demonstrate to the British people our views are their views, and actually we can represent the hard-working silent majority of our country.
Look, silent majority, you mentioned there. With respect, I do wonder if you've gone on a slight journey yourself. I mean, there were clips at the last Tory party conference of, being quite pally with Nigel Farage, for example. I think you've recently condemned some of his rhetoric, especially around the riot. So what would a Priti Patel Conservative party look like in relation to Nigel Farage? Would you continue to condemn his language? Would you welcome him in? How would you go about
Patrick,
it?
first of all, I haven't gone on a journey. I've been consistent for 30 years in my views, my values and my beliefs. I'm a Conservative. I'm an absolute Conservative. I think when it comes to, you've asked about Nigel. Nigel's a long-standing friend of mine. I've known Nigel for a long time. And, I could debate with him, discuss issues with him, and I'm happy to do that. Let's not forget, the Conservative Party has lost the general election. And with that, Reform are a party that stood against Conservative candidates at the general election. They were part of us losing the election. We lost amazing, decent public servants at this general election, which is a shame. So, I believe that, Reform is a party that, we will challenge, oppose. There might be times in the parliamentary party debate, I don't know, in Parliament, where they seek to side with us. Who knows, right? That's for Parliament in the future. And you've asked me about Nigel's language. It's no different to what I said about Jess Phillips right now. We're all democratically elected politicians. We should know the full facts, and we need to be careful about the language that we use publicly, particularly at a very sensitive time like now. There's a lot of misinformation. We haven't even had a conversation yet about the misinformation, social media platforms, etc. I know from our policing authorities, police forces around the country, I've seen it. I've had the inside track, the privilege of knowing and understanding how this works. The police will be watching what goes on. The national
would you be getting tougher on Elon Musk then?
So just a second. The national policing lead for protests from the lead chief constable in the country has publicly said that misinformation has played a huge factor in all of this. That is really important. You've asked about Elon Musk. I mean, getting into spats with Elon Musk, I think, is obviously not the right way forward. Right now, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of our country, needs to come to Parliament, be asked the questions, give the leadership that is needed on, being accountable, transparent and dealing with this awful, awful situation. And, we need to make sure that the police, as I've said, are doing what they need to do. But importantly, Patrick, our streets are not safe right now. Public safety comes first, and we've got to put the public safety of the British people front and centre of everything that we do. OK.
In order to do all of this, in order to sell your vision, which you've just done there, of what the Conservative Party would look like under Priti Patel, you are going to have to fight off a couple of people. Robert Jenrick was described as the favourite earlier today. I'm sure you would disagree, but he was described as the favourite earlier today. Why are you better than him?
Well, as I've said, my skills, my experience, I'm a long-standing Conservative, and yes, I've worked in government, in many departments. I do absolutely think, the job of being leader of the opposition is challenging. It comes with all sorts of challenges, and you need experience. You need the strength of that experience and the ability to carry colleagues with you and to work with colleagues as well. People have known me for a long time. They know I'm not someone that's sort of changed my views or my positions. I am consistent. And I'm a Conservative, a full-blooded Conservative in that sense. And I believe that I can bring my skills, my experience, unity and strength into play to challenge the government, to be a robust leader of the opposition. I can tell you now, I don't want a Labour government to be more than a one-term Labour government. And I believe with my leadership, we can absolutely challenge them and hold them to account and get our party match fit all over again to win the next general election.